You were a bit gutted that Ange Postecoglou's not signing for Chelsea then?
Well, look, it was a topic of conversation considering Chelsea's woes this season, but no, I think it's a bit disappointing. I'm gonna have to maybe not change allegiances, definitely not, but yeah, I've gotta have a soft spot for Ange always, but yeah, it's a fantastic get for Tottenham if the deal gets over the line, which we think it will.
Yeah, I was watching your video before on Ange Postecoglou, and you seem to be like a bit gutted, a bit happy for Ange, but gutted that you believe Tottenham are getting a very good manager. So, what kind of manager do you think Spurs are getting with Postecoglou?
I think you're getting like the epitome of like a modern day manager. I think he strikes the balance between being a very good tactician and a good kind of on-field manager, as well as being able to handle personalities and be a very good man manager. We've seen there's been clips flying around on Twitter about his ability to motivate and his ability to kind of, I wouldn't say like handle egos, because I think that's probably something that we'll be able to that we haven't seen yet, considering the clubs that he's managed haven't been in that kind of elite of world football. But yeah, you're getting a really good, well-rounded modern day manager who I think has the ability to, well, not only does he have the ability to, but he's shown the ability to overcome adversity time and time again in his managerial career so far. So yeah, it's going to be exciting times for Tottenham should he be given the backing of the board, which I think is the most important thing.
Yeah, there's a lot of worries in the Spurs fan base because he's never managed in a top league. He's managed Australia, the national team, Japan, and now Celtic in Scotland. But he's never had a top 5 league. Do you think the Premier League, I mean, he'll hit the ground running in the Premier League, or will it take a time to adapt?
Well, throughout his managerial career, he's had slow starts towards in his jobs. He lost his first game as Celtic boss. His start in Japan wasn't overly great as well. Even his start as a Socceroos boss for the Australian national team wasn't all that good as well. But I think that's just him kind of setting his feet. I think he's a manager that does need a lot of time because he's very I wouldn't say complicated, but his ideology is very complex, and they require a lot of muscle memory in terms of his tactics, and it also requires time for him to build relationships with a lot of players. If you speak to, I think there's interviews with some players who played in that Socceroos squad when he was managing in that 2014 World Cup and even in the 2015 Asian Cup triumph, where they speak about Ange as a person who you slowly warm to over time, and he becomes this kind of father figure that you can look up to, you can have a joke with, but also is that manager. He's the boss. He knows what he's doing, and you kind of listen to him. So yeah, I think I hope that the Spurs fans and also the board give him time, because I wouldn't be surprised if it's, I wouldn't say a rough start, but if it takes a couple of games, maybe a month for him to fully get invested into the team and really hit the ground running, maybe a month, 2 months into the season. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if the first month isn't overly great, but it will smooth itself out, no doubt.
Yeah, one thing Spurs fans are all like kind of looking forward to with this appointment is kind of he's been known to play like good, attractive, possession-based, attacking football, high pressing stuff. But it's interesting that when he was manager of Australia, I'm assuming that he maybe couldn't always have played that kind of style of football because, Australia, no disrespect, they're not like the best footballing team when it gets to World Cups and things like that. If they go high pressing, attacking football against some of the best teams, they'll get ripped apart. So I was just wondering, like, when he was Australia manager, was he quite adaptable? Was he able to play a bit more defensive and be successful in that way? Or does it not matter who he plays? Does he just play his way and see and whatever happens kind of thing?
Well, funnily enough, that was actually something that a lot of people were critical in Australia. They were critical of him, is that he just continued to play this aggressive, possession-based, high-tempo football, even if it wasn't working at times. He went through the qualification campaign for the 2018 World Cup, and we had to go through qualifiers because to get there against Syria in the Asian qualifiers, and Australia did get caught out at times in possession in like the middle third at times throughout that game and throughout that campaign. But he's always been a manager that has stuck to his guns. He knows his philosophy, and he keeps to that philosophy. I think there's this clip floating around Twitter. I'm sure most people have seen it, where he speaks about he's speaking to his dad about the 2015 Asian Cup victory, and his dad says if he stopped passing it out the back and started being a little bit more defensive, we wouldn't have had to go to extra time. But he just kept doing it because that's the only way he knows, and he loves to play attacking advanced football. But I'm sure with the I wouldn't say the expectation of the Spurs job, but moving into this higher position in world football, I'm sure he will be definitely. I'm sure he will have to adapt at some stages, and he's like throughout his whole managerial career, I should say. He's shown a good ability to adapt to the circumstances that arise. So, while I think the main priority for him will be to play advanced attacking football, I think he can turn to a slightly more composed and controlled style of football if needed at times.
Yeah, because that is one of my kind of concerns about Postecoglou, is about how naive he is defensively, and Spurs have conceded a hell of a lot of goals this season or last season. So do you think that he can do his kind of like attack is the best form of defense, is the way he's going to go about things, and maybe in certain games, maybe against the likes of Man City or the likes of really strong attacking teams, that we could get pummeled a few times next season?
I think it comes with the territory. I do agree with what you said about if attack is the best form of defense. I definitely think that Ange subscribes to that mindset for sure. But I also think, yeah, like I said, it comes with the territory. In order to create like a dynasty, in order to create a team that wins trophies year on year on year, you have to go through a little bit of a rough patch to cement your game style. And when we saw with Liverpool under Jurgen Klopp, I'm not comparing Postecoglou to Jurgen Klopp just yet, but just we saw at the start of his campaign at Liverpool, or his tenure at Liverpool, it wasn't really the best of starts. There were some games where Liverpool got caught out and they conceded a hell of a lot of goals, but they also were able to score quite a few as well. So I think it does come with the territory. I think the main thing is time. I think obviously Spurs, the current squad isn't where it should be in terms of when you're comparing it to likes of Man City, even Liverpool. So assuming that there's a total revamp of the squad, which I think everyone expects, I think it would come kind of it's going to be there and thereabouts. I think you will see games where Spurs are caught out defensively at times, and then you're going to see games where defensively they're on song, and even attackingly they're unbelievable as well. So I think it will just be about time and how much patience everyone gives him in order to really set his philosophy into the team.
Yeah, do you believe, like, in terms of how highly you rate Postecoglou, like, do you believe, given time at Tottenham in this job, like, he could really go toe-to-toe with some of the big managers in the Premier League? Do you rate him that highly? Or do you think there is maybe a ceiling for him in the Premier League for maybe like a top 4 finish or something?
I rate him. I rate him highly. I think he's a very, very, very good manager. We obviously haven't seen it against the world's best, but what we've seen, like at every single stage in his managerial journey, we've seen it's constantly been reminded to us that he's a world-class manager, in my opinion. And what a lot of people compare him to Steven Gerrard, obviously because Gerrard is pretty much a very similar situation, dominated in Scotland and then moved to the Premier League and didn't really do that well under with Aston Villa. But I think Gerrard got shunted into that Rangers job, and really without any previous managerial experience. Postecoglou has done the rounds. He's been in Australia for half a decade, has been the Australian League's best ever manager, arguably. Went to Japan, won the league with a team that hadn't won a league in 15 years and did it without even being able to speak the language. And then he moved to Celtic, and we saw just how quickly he was able to adapt and take that Celtic team back to where they belong in that league. So I do rate him highly. He's got the credits in the bank, and it's all about. I think it's all about a little bit of luck will have to fall his way, of course, and and some transfers will have to fall his way. His players will have to hit form at times throughout the season. But I think the current makeup of the Spurs team, especially in the attacking third, I think suits his philosophy quite well. So hopefully it's a match made in heaven.
One of his first point of calls as Spurs manager will be to try and get Harry Kane on side and get Harry Kane to sign that new contract. What do you think Harry Kane's mentality is going to be coming into this with Ange Postecoglou coming in? Do you think it's a possibility that he can get Kane on side?
Look, it's all. I think it's all down to Harry Kane. Of course, we all know he's a player that has flirted at times with leaving Spurs. However, you look at the character of the man, and you'd hope that he would be invested in this new project. We've seen Ange has the ability to win over a lot of people. Just speak to any Celtic supporter, really. Like you guys said just before, he was a joke basically when he got signed as a Celtic boss. He was able to turn a whole fan base around. I'm sure he has the ability to do that with players as well, but it goes down to that potentially one asterisk on his record, as on his CV, I should say, that we don't know how he's able to deal with the big egos that come with the big jobs, with the big clubs. So I would, based on what I've seen, based on what I've read, based on what I know, I would think that the combination of Harry Kane's loyalty to Spurs, and obviously being able to finally win a trophy with Spurs and take them up back to the top upper echelons of the league, couple that with Ange Postecoglou's ability to be a very personable person, if that makes sense, and being able to really win over a lot of people, I think he will be able to win Harry Kane over. And I think not only from a man management perspective, but also from a tactical perspective, Harry Kane under Ange Postecoglou could be a very, very dangerous threat for the rest of the league.
Why do you think at 57 he hasn't had a move yet to a major top 5 European league? Do you think there's just a stigma maybe around Australian coaches? Do you think could you think of a reason why he wouldn't have made the move yet?
Well, I think it's pretty much there is a stigma in my opinion, and I also think it's not only a stigma from coaches that aren't in Europe or aren't in South America to big footballing federations, but I also think the stigma within Australia about Australian football has held him back a lot. I mean, we could be here for hours talking about the relationship that the sport of football has with the people in Australia, but Ange Postecoglou should not have succeeded in the way that he has done, based on he's the epitome of what shouldn't succeed in Australian football, and he's able to overcome adversity time and time again. And I just think he's taken the long road. He's got the credits in the bank, and maybe if he did start his career in Europe, he started managing in the lower tiers of Europe's leagues, then maybe he could have got a job sooner. But I think I agree in terms of he's 57, he hasn't got the job yet. He hasn't had a job in Europe yet, or in Europe's top 5 leagues, I should say. But I also think you can look at that as a negative, but I also think you can look at that as a positive and say he's worked really, really hard to get to this point. He's not going to throw it away. He's not going to be profligate. He's not going to be taking this job for granted, put it that way. He lives and breathes football. So if he was English, if he was Spanish, if he was Brazilian, Argentinian, I'm sure that he would have got this job or a job like this a lot sooner. I just think it comes with the territory of being a manager not in a top footballing confederation.
Fair enough.
Let me ask you this to finish it off. I mean, obviously, we know that Spurs fans are going to have to be patient with Ange Postecoglou coming in. But if I had to ask you, if you had to make a prediction of how Spurs' season will look next season and what realistic are our targets, what would you say they would be?
It's tricky to say, obviously, before the transfer window has really got underway. But I can definitely see a world in which Ange Postecoglou leads you guys to a League Cup or an FA Cup. I think he's that type of manager that will look at the priorities of Spurs, and obviously that trophy drought is kind of hanging over Tottenham. And I think that is obviously something that if you can tick that off nice and early, win the fan base over like fully straight away, I think that's obviously a priority. But if Tottenham make top 4 next season, it wouldn't surprise me in the slightest. Definitely.
Wow, really? Top 4? From 8th?
Yeah. I think Tottenham underperformed this season as it is. And assuming Harry Kane stays, assuming players like Son find their form again, and plus the signings that will eventually be made, you'd think, I wouldn't be surprised if Spurs make top 4 next season.
So if we don't make top 4 or win an FA Cup or League Cup, we're coming for you.
That's fine. Bro. You can have the receipts.
Do you rate him higher than Pochettino?
I don't know how to answer that, but I would rather Ange Postecoglou be Chelsea boss right now, put it that way.
Wow. That's mental. That is absolutely mad. Because
I
would prefer Pochettino to be the Spurs boss, so we can make a swap if you want.
I'm down. I can do that.
But Ari, thank you so much for coming on. Really good insight into Ange Postecoglou today. Do you want to tell people where they can find you, what content you do on your channel?
Yeah, so the two-footer tackle podcast is basically a weekly football podcast where I just sit down here at this desk in front of this camera and just talk about the week's happenings. New episode dropping in about 18 hours time, so 6 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. So I'm not quite sure what that is in England, but just I talk about football for an hour each week, and you can check it over. Head on over to it at the Two Footer Tackle podcast on YouTube and all audio platforms as well.
Oh, I've
Brilliant.
pinned it to the chat, so go check him out, people.
Really good insight. I really enjoyed that. So thank you so much, Ari, for coming on. And yeah, maybe we'll get you on again once Ange Postecoglou is up and running, and we'll all be saying, "Oh wow, you were so right about it all." So I can't wait for that.
Thank you guys very much. Appreciate it.
It's coming from 1:46 a.m. in the morning. Just I loaded up the YouTube page and I saw you guys, and I had to join.
Big up to you, man. You're just staying up all night waiting for the official announcement, are you?
Yeah, waited for the here we go.
The guy, you can't sleep until Postecoglou's been appointed. Well, maybe you'll be able to get some sleep soon. Look, as an Australian Spurs fan, tell me how excited you are about the potential appointment. Oh, well, it looks like the imminent appointment of Postecoglou.
Well, ever since kind of like the Brisbane Raw team that was kind of lauded as like the Raw Salona team, we've been kind of applauding up Ange Postecoglou just because of his rise to the Australian national team. He got playing Australia. Typically, Australia kind of plays like direct football, and he got him playing very nice football that won the Asian Cup. It was a very weird exit from the national team where he left before the 2018 National World Cup, and it was bit weird going to Japan, but he's managed to succeed and play that attacking possession football everywhere. And I think there's one like kind of fact that like people are discounting him from going from like lower leagues, like not a top 5 league, when you kind of have to applaud him for that. The A League itself, it's kind of not a too good of a league, but it's a salary capped league. So he went on a 38 game unbeaten streak in a salary capped league. That goes to show less of the players. You can only bring in like one marquee like player, kind of like the MLS.
Mm-hmm.
And to go on a 38 game winning streak, I guess it comes to the tactics and the man management. Alongside, if you go to Japan and you take over a middling team that was mid-table and then win the title with them, it's less about the players and like how much money the club has, and more about the tactics that he brings in.
So do you believe, like, on a tactical level, he's up there with the best in the Premier League?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, I think the fan base has grown tired of the 5 at the back defensive football that we've kind of had under Jose, Nuno, Conte. And I think to kind of dismiss him and say that he's a bad manager because of just his not because of his like accomplishments like Scotland and like Australia and Japan. I want to be seeing that attacking football. I'm tired of just kind of like I'll be watching the games like online and stuff, and I'm like half the time I'm like looking at my phone because we're just playing tired like boring football. And I think along with this situation with Harry Kane, I'm not too sure where we're at if we get like if this didn't happen, and if we got like Enrique or someone else, where would we be? We would be like 9th or 10th or like 8th. Without Harry Kane, I don't think we're a top 4 side. And I think bringing in a project manager like Ange, who will bring in an attacking philosophy and is very good with the young players and will bring in hidden gems. I desperately want much more of like a road or like a pathway from our academy to that first team. We were talking about how like I think back in like 2014, 2015, we had one of the like youngest sides in the Premier League in that year. And now we barely see any of the academy players like go into the first team. Like, I think really only what we see is Tanganga and Skip. And I want more of kind of a bridge from the academy to the first team. And I think Ange can fit those players from the academy and fit them into the philosophy. And hopefully we get to see more of those players.
Is he good? Is he good with young players? Then does he like playing a lot of the youth? Does he like bringing a lot of the younger players through?
I think because he started at South Melbourne and then he went into the youth Australian sides. So he does like I think he spent 2 or 3 years there. So he's gotten some experience with like judging characters and like kind of meshing well with like young players and coaching them right. So I think giving him like a focus on kind of bringing up the youth and kind of like focusing on those high potential players that we have at the club that have kind of been unused or have been on loan. So players like Gil, Udogi, who's just coming back from loan. I know Reguilon is not too young, but I'm hopeful to see him go into the first team because we do need more of like a fullback rather than a wingback. Oh yeah, Sa. I'm actually kind of, it's not a young player, but I'm kind of interested to see if Ndombele can kind of fit back into that team with the more of the possession and more of like the technical center mid that he kind of uses in his formations and in his tactics.
Yeah, I'm interested to see that as well. Who we can maybe revitalize as well, because that's been a big element to maybe how Spurs have been the last year or so. Maybe a lot of players underperforming. Has he been known to like get the very best out of like the current crop of players and bring them to like a new level, or get something more out of them?
I think looking back, I've done like a little bit of research. His Brisbane Raw sides that he's like came in into, they were very middling sides. Even like the Yokohamas, they finished I think just outside the playoff spots, around 6. They kind of had like a bad season with him, like the first season, and then they won the title after. But he's a very like aggressive, like if there's a player that doesn't cut it or doesn't fit into his tactical philosophy, or like he doesn't see the right mentality from the player, he will cut, he will like sell them. So a lot of the veteran players, I think from his Brisbane Raw teams and Melbourne Victory teams, he like I think he sold very veteran players that who were playing there for a long time and were like very key players the season before. So he's not afraid to kind of transfer or sell some of the players that might be seen as key mainstays or might be overlonging their stay. I'm looking at you, Eric Dyer, but diabolical. But I'm optimistic to see whether he can kind of bring a new level out of the players that we've, I would say, sometimes wasted our money on, or we haven't seen the full potential out of.
Like the people, as you was been saying, like we shouldn't really look at his experience, but the fact that he is 57 and hasn't managed in a top European league before, and the fact that the Premier League seems to be moving tactically very quickly, even in the past decade, is there any reservations at all that he could be maybe behind in that sense, in terms of how fast moving the Premier League is, and he hasn't managed in this league before?
Is he going to be Is he going to be playing? Is he going to put some boots on, some pleats?
No, he's going to be managing.
I don't think. I don't think age is a factor when it comes to management. I think his tactics are very forward in terms of like his time, in terms of like his time at Japan and like Celtic, of that possession football. As I said before, when he was managing in the A League, the Barcelona term, it was Barcelona light in terms of the passing display, the possession. It wasn't seen before in Australia. So I don't think you can say he's behind in terms of tactics. I think even people compare him to like Pep Light in terms of using the overlapping fullbacks, the inverted fullback, the possession based sides. And I think when I was researching it before, when Pep and Manchester City went on a preseason tour in Japan and versed Ange's Japanese team, he was saying just how like that was the toughest match on this preseason schedule. I think Raheem Sterling, when he was playing at Manchester City, he said a quote about the game that was the best passing from the back team that they've played in the preseason, and I'm guessing in that preseason they were versing against other European giants. And to kind of facilitate that system and that set of tactics with kind of players that are not up to quality with other like European clubs, you kind of have to compare it and see when he uses that tactics with the players that we have at our club, players of like world-class caliber, what magic he can do with it.
In terms of like how this move, like just for Australia in general, do you think like this is a massive like opportunity, like like in a way for Australian soccer to be taken a bit more seriously in Europe? Because there must, like, there, as my brother said before, there hasn't been any Australian manager before in a European top 5 league as a manager. There must be a reason, whether it be Stigma or whatever, as to why that happened, what has happened, been the case thus far. Do you think many Australians see this as opportunity, as if this goes well for Postecoglou, maybe European clubs or European football might start to take like Australian soccer a lot more seriously, and maybe start, bringing over maybe more people from Australia and stuff like that?
Yeah, I've definitely seen it in the media coverage. Every time Ange would be linked from like a move away from Celtic, when it was, I think it was Leicester maybe, or like Brighton, there was always news articles about it, news stories. I think it just comes to how, I don't know, Australian football has kind of been looked down upon. It's just because of our league, our A League. It's not too good. You kind of, sometimes you often see like compilations on YouTube of like the fails or whatever on it. Yeah, I think you might have seen one of those. But I think there's a kind of rising belief that we can get more Australian footballers and more Australian football managers abroad and see whether they can compete. I think Ange is probably our best football like prospect that we've had. If you include both footballers, players, and managers, aside from Timmy Cahill and Harry Kewell, he is our best managerial product that we've had, and I can't wait to see what he can do in the Premier League. And I think the whole of Australia will be watching and seeing how he does.
Interesting. All right, Ralph, great to chat to you, mate. Cheers for calling in.
That's been great.
Appreciate your insight.
Last time we talked, Gareth Bale was announced back on loan, so that was fun.
You only come for the big moments,
All
Ralph.
the way back. Yeah.
Exactly. I hope it wasn't this late in the morning or early in the morning for you as well back then. But hopefully, look, I'm sure you'll be staying up for a lot more Spurs matches now that Postecoglou's appointed. It's going to be, should be a lot of fun then. Should be a lot of fun. All right, Ralph, great to chat to you, mate. Speak to you soon.
No, all good.